Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Are problems still brewing? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? We'll talk about that. Plus, there's a flop artist in the NBA. And according to some folks, the number one nemesis is LeBron James. Also, an injury to Anthony Davis. Could this ruin the Lakers' title hopes? All that and more coming up. First Takes in the house. I told y'all the weekend's over, so you know what time it is. Let's go.
Here is Anthony Davis on the right wing. Davis fouled by Jokic. Uh-oh.
Reaching down.
AD's holding his right Achilles. It's if he's re-injured it, yeah, and he pulled up on it hard. I think he could be done for the night.
There's always next man up. No matter who's out. We're not asking anybody to pick up what AD does. You can't do that. It's impossible. He's a special player and a special talent for a reason. So, everyone individually has to, pick up their play for the collective of the team, in AD's absence. So we look forward to that challenge.
Yep, the weekend is over and we have a lot to talk about. Everyone, welcome on into First Take on this Monday. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith in the house. Both of you looking very dapper this morning. Although, Stephen A., I must say, a little disappointed to not see you with your man bag. I know that's your style staple these days, but we'll move on from that because, guys, we have injuries on two championship contenders that happened over the weekend. First, KD, he's in Brooklyn. He has a strained hamstring, but you just heard from LeBron, so let's go to LA and focus on the injury with AD. Now, last night, Anthony Davis was pulled from action after the first half, after the Nuggets, and aggravating the tendinosis in his right Achilles. He will now undergo an MRI today. That according to a source telling our Adrian Wojnarowski. The big man missing 2 games earlier this week for the same issue with his right Achilles. And the Lakers, they did go on to fall 122 to 105 to the Nuggets. So, Stephen A., let's start with you here. What was your first reaction after hearing about AD's injury?
My first reaction after hearing about Anthony Davis aggravating his right Achilles is that the Brooklyn Nets are going to win the NBA championship. That's the first reaction that I had, Max Kellerman. My reaction is that it's the Lakers, as far as I'm concerned, are the only team standing in the way of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden winning the chip. And I've dismissed the Eastern Conference, and I don't mean any disrespect. Philadelphia is vastly improved. Milwaukee is not a team to ignore. I get all of that. But the bottom line is I'm looking at James Harden right now. The brother's averaging 23, 11, and 8 on 48% shooting, 38% from three-point range. I don't need to get into Kevin Durant's number. It's at 29%. I'm worried about his hamstring strain or whatever. Keep an eye on that. But I'm as long as he's healthy, I'm looking at it along those lines. And Kyrie Irving is just playing like the superstar talent that he is. He is putting on a show night in and night out. Now, when he takes a hiatus or whatever, you get worried because that could be distraction. We understand that. But when this brother is on the court, he is something spectacular to behold. They're the number one offense in the NBA. They're absolutely, positively unstoppable. And it's going to take an elite team on both ends of the floor to knock them off. We've got elite defensive teams in the NBA. We've got elite offensive teams in the NBA. What we don't have outside of the Lakers in our mind, due to LeBron James, what we don't have is a team that has both, other than the Lakers. That's how we view them. And so when I look at Anthony Davis, LeBron is as sensational as he's been, particularly from three-point range. That was before February. In the month of February, he's shooting like 28% from three-point range. So it's dipped a little bit. Obviously, he's not doing what he's been doing for the first month and a half of the season from three-point range. But I still look at it and I say LeBron will be just fine. He'll be there when it counts, but he needs AD. And without AD, the Lakers have no chance of winning the championship. And if the Lakers have no chance, then who the hell is going to beat Brooklyn? That answer is absolutely, positively no one. And so when I heard about Anthony Davis, and I saw that Achilles strain, and I don't think, Max, he should be playing for the next month. I think he should be out at least a month. Don't even play with it. Let him sit down. No all-star, no nothing. He doesn't need to be playing for at least another month. And these guys need to get away from wearing them damn low-top sneakers. Wear some high-top sneakers, for crying out loud. That might help you a little bit, too. Go old school. Stop doing this stuff.
With Chuck Taylor? What do you want?
Put up the boots. Wear boots, for crying out loud. Do something. But in the end, the first thought that came to my mind is the Brooklyn Nets are going to win the NBA championship if Anthony Davis can't go.
That's not where my mind went. My mind went right to the Western Conference. First of all, let me just address your Nets point. The fact that Kyrie approaches James Harden and says, "You're the point guard, I'm off guard," is exactly right. It's self-serving in a way because Kyrie gets to shoot more. But the reason Harden's better than Kyrie really is because he has better judgment with the ball. His judgment's better than Kyrie. He's a more mature player. But in terms of just spectacular skills, Kyrie is even better than Harden. I mean, in terms of scoring the ball, I know Harden's an amazing scorer, but this is the best allocation of their resources. Harden's taller, so you think of him more as a two-guard and Kyrie shorter. But in fact, Kyrie got that right. And so I think they're going to benefit from that kind of understanding of roles. I think what we saw from DeAndre Jordan last week was important because if he can be the defensive player in the paint, and they don't have to play 5 out, they can play 4 out with Joe Harris and the big 3. They don't need to play Jeff Green at the 5. If DeAndre Jordan can be that guy to secure those defensive boards, the Nets could get out of the East. But Stephen A., that's not necessarily the situation we have right now with the Nets. We're hoping that they can get there. Right now, they're giving up more points than is possible to get to a finals. Let me say why my mind goes to the Western Conference. If the Lakers don't have an AD, and I agree with you, take a nice long rest till it is better. If the Lakers don't have AD, they not only have to contend with Denver, who got playoff experience last year and just smoked them without AD, the Denver team that came back on the Clippers that wasn't ready for the Lakers last year, they're not getting by that Denver team without AD, obviously. What about Utah right now? I'm going to get to them a little bit later in the show. The Clippers. You keep talking about Kawhi came to L.A. and he targeted LeBron. That's true. But last year, in fact, they didn't have quite enough. They needed a point guard to organize the offense. I felt they didn't wind up with it. They didn't get Rondo in the offseason, so I thought, no, I'm not worried about the Clippers. Paul George can't be a good enough Robin to Kawhi's Batman. But Stephen A., they did a couple of things. They brought in Serge Ibaka, which we both felt was a marginal improvement over Montrezl Harrell. They can both defend, but Ibaka can also block shots and shoot from the outside, making him a more valuable piece. But also Nick Batum. Nick Batum, once upon a time, got a max deal or a near max deal, and no one was like, or some people were, but the consensus was, yeah, he's a really good player. He earned that contract. Talk about statless all-star. This guy does everything you want him to do. Then he went to a non-competitive situation. He got his money. He wasn't competing for the playoffs. He looked like he was done with basketball, to me anyway. But on the Clippers, Stephen A., this dude is back to being Nick Batum. And when you factor that in, how do the Lakers get by the Clippers without AD? Even without Batum? Even if it was Harrell without Ibaka? How would they get by the Clippers without AD? I don't think they get out of the West. I don't know if they get to the Western Conference Finals without AD. And I think that's a bigger problem than Brooklyn. Brooklyn's first got to play some defense even to get out of the East.
Well, I get where you're coming from. I mean, what I'm saying to you, Max Kellerman, is that, again, the question is, what was the first thought that came to my mind after the injury? So I'm not saying it to imply that Brooklyn would beat the Nets. I mean, that Brooklyn would beat the Lakers in the finals. I'm saying that Brooklyn would win it all. You understand what I'm saying? Because of whether the Lakers probably wouldn't get to the finals, which is basically your point. So there's no disagreement there. But I don't think there's anybody else that can beat the Nets other than the Los Angeles Lakers, a healthy Los Angeles Lakers squad. I don't think there's anybody else that would beat them, and that includes the Clippers, despite what the Brooklyn Nets defensive woes are. Did you watch the game when the Clippers played the Nets a couple of weeks ago? Did you watch how the Clippers